When you think about Kenny Pickett, the first thing that comes to mind is his breakout season. Before the year began, Pickett wasn't even on most scouts' radars. He was seen as your average ACC quarterback, and I doubt many had him high on their boards. He finished both 2019 and 2020 throwing for 13 touchdowns and 9 picks. Well, in 2021, things changed drastically. Pickett threw for over 4,300 yards, and he also converted 42 touchdowns while only throwing 7 picks. This breakout performance was one of the best we've seen in some time. The level of improvement that Pickett showed makes him a very intriguing prospect in this year's draft. Before we begin, if you could do me a huge favor and like and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate it. So anyways, throughout the 2021 season, Pickett showed a command of his offense. He would stand confidently in the pocket, and he would throw accurately all over the field. He was one of the most accurate throwers last season. If you factor in drops, Pickett's adjusted completion percentage was close to 80%, which would put him top 5 in all college. While many offenses include screens and RPOs left and right, Pittsburgh's offense featured a lot more vertical down-the-field throws. You had fades, you had crossing routes, and you also had a nice mixture of the quick game as well. Pickett did a fantastic job of going through his progressions and making the correct read. He also threw with really good timing. When he was in rhythm with his offense, the ball would be out quickly and it would reach the receiver before he even broke on his route. There were so many comebacks, slant routes, and digs that were all thrown with great timing. His anticipation to stay in a rhythm-based offense is something that I really liked. Let's look at an example. This play happened against Tennessee on 3rd and 10. There was a minute and 20 left in the half, and Pittsburgh was attempting to drive down the field to score. This play right here set up that touchdown. After Pittsburgh scored on this drive, they were able to hold the lead for the rest of the game. Before the snap, Tennessee had 2 safeties deep. They're actually playing cover 6 on this one. Cover 6 is made up of a 3 deep, 4 under shell. It's different than your traditional cover 3 defense because it's played like a combination of cover 2 and cover 4. The deep left safety will cover the deep half, while the deep right safety and the cornerback on the right sideline will split their half of the field. This means instead of splitting the deep portion of the field into thirds, it's more of a quarter-half coverage. From the offense's perspective, Pickett's goal is to read the safeties after the snap and figure out if they're rotating at this look. He first starts by checking the deep right safety. Since he stayed by the right hash, Pickett knows to work the boundary side of this play. From the stacked alignment on the left, the inside receiver ran a dig route finding space between zones. To place an accurate throw, Pickett had to do 2 things. He had to throw it on the receiver's break, and he also had to fit the ball between the linebackers underneath so they couldn't break it up. The good news is that the play design stretched these zones apart. The strong side linebacker is pulled enough out of the way so that Pickett was able to place the ball on his receiver's back shoulder. One thing to note is that yes, the ball was slightly behind, but again, the worry for any throw in front is that the strong side linebacker can make a play. In an ideal world, the ball would have been out a fraction of a second earlier. The way I see it is that if Pickett can clean up his arm mechanics and shorten his release just a little bit, then the timing would have been perfect. Now, outside of arm mechanics, the one thing that consistently popped up was his footwork. There were 2 things I noticed. First, Pickett has a habit of throwing off his back foot. He does this even when he has room to plant and drive the ball. This is why so many people complain about his arm strength. They see that the ball doesn't have a ton of zip, and they argue that he doesn't have the strength to make every throw. In my opinion, I think it's a matter of footwork and how he doesn't always shift his way through the throw. I do believe he has enough arm strength. The other thing I noticed with his footwork is that Pickett doesn't shift forward in the pocket to set up his throws. He'll often leave his base behind, and he'll do this run forward throw thing to make a pass. Too often, Pickett will stand at the back of the pocket. Ideally, a quarterback will be at a depth of about 7 or 8 yards. In Pickett's case, he consistently stood at 9 to 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage. The issue with this depth is that it allows pass rushers around the corner. This will allow them to encroach into space, and this is why he had so many defenders near his base when he threw the ball. He needs to step up and allow his offensive tackles to close the door. As I went through his film, a thought occurred to me that I simply couldn't shake. It's in my strong belief that the reason why he stands so far back in the pocket is that it has to do with pressure. How Pickett deals with pressure and how that pressure affects his process is something that really bothered me. Way too often, he looks skittish in the pocket. I just didn't get the sense that he felt comfortable standing back there. At times, he would leave a perfectly clean pocket even when he had space to step around and reset his feet for the throw. Let me show you an example. This play against Georgia Tech comes to mind. Almost immediately after taking his drop, Pickett was already on the move. He wants to scramble and he wants to use his legs even though he has a clean pocket next to him. Since Georgia Tech was only rushing 3, Pickett could have stayed in the pocket longer. If he did this, he could have found the running back over the middle, or he could have found number 7 bailing backwards. Instead of finding either, he starts to scramble outside. While his throw after he escaped was fine, Pickett's process is what I'm looking at here. He consistently did this, and against good defense that will have the speed to hunt him down, this really worries me. This pocket has plenty of space to work with. He needs to step to his left and find another opportunity for a throw. On another play versus Clemson, he did this once again. Pickett stood at 9 to 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Then he stared down his tight end as he was running towards the flat, and he threw a very late pass that went out of bounds. Going back to the start of this play, Pickett has plenty of room to step up. If he stepped forward to the 3-yard line, he could have worked his eyes back to the middle of the field. There was an open receiver by the 25-yard line. This could have been a big gain. Even if he didn't like that throw, stepping up would have allowed him to scramble up the middle. He could have easily gained yards on the ground too. Now, speaking of scrambling, Pickett was great at extending plays. He does a fantastic job of escaping a pocket to create more for his offense. I think if his future team uses a combination of play action and some quick game too, he's going to find some early success in the pros. Now, before we wrap up this video, a lot has been made about his small hands. Are there going to be a problem in the NFL? Looking around, it seems like the biggest concern has to do with ball security, especially in bad weather. While his hands did measure at some of the smallest in the entire NFL draft, what's interesting is that Pickett's fumble rate wasn't that bad. He only fumbled 6 times, which is good for a 1.1% fumble rate. The average last season was 1.9%, so Pickett was actually better than that average. Now, I don't have in the pocket versus rushing fumbles, but looking at this metric, his fumble issues might be a bit overblown. I'll be really interested to see if this becomes a bigger problem in the NFL. Overall, there's a lot to like about Pickett. He's generally pretty accurate. With a quicker throwing motion, his timing will be even better, and I think with cleaned up footwork, Pickett will be able to drive the ball all over the field. Also, his ability to extend the play is really good too. Now, as I mentioned before, his pocket awareness is definitely concerning. He can escape and scramble under pressure, and all of that was good. But my issue was his lack of comfort. Seeing a quarterback already be skittish before he enters the NFL is something that really worries me. For this reason, I can't justify spending a first rounder on Pickett. As of this moment, I have him as a second round player, and that's the earliest I'd be willing to take him. Well, that's all I have for you in this video. Next up, we'll be looking at Desmond Ridder from the Cincinnati Bearcats. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel and keep a lookout for that video. Thanks again. You can support me directly via my Patreon, link below. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at Samuel R. Gold.